Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. We talk to a lot of successful people on Fear and Greed, founders, CEOs, business leaders, men and women at the top of their game, and they all have different stories of how they got there. Today, I wanted to look at what it takes to succeed at that high level, the sacrifice, the connections, the resilience, and above all, of course, the hard work. Tory Archbold is the founder of business coaching platform Powerful Steps. She's also the host of the podcast Powerful Stories, sharing the stories and major moments in the lives of some of Australia's most prominent, most successful women. Tory Archbold, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Thank you so much for having me. I am such a fan and I'm also such a numbers girl, and I wanted to congratulate you guys on 1.3 million downloads since the beginning of 2022. That's incredible.
Well, I think let's start with your story first, because your story is pretty incredible. I mean, Powerful Stories, the podcast, of course, is all about other women, but let's talk about you first. How did you get to where you are? You started a PR agency, Torstar, in your 20s, some big clients then.
Yeah, so I had a bit of a dream when I returned from the working holiday visa from London, where I'd had the opportunity to work with the best of the best in media and entertainment. And I think what that visa gave me was an education, because I never finished my degree. I started off interior design and I just decided it wasn't for me. I wanted to go out into the big wide world, but I wanted to learn from the best of the best. And I had the opportunity because you could do 12-week stints on this visa. So I worked for Viacom, which was the number one media entertainment company in the world, and really learnt the art of storytelling through working with Nickelodeon, with Showtime networks, and of course MTV. Then I went and did a little stint in Columbia TriStar. I also worked in a licensing company, so I got to really understand what happens behind the scenes, how do you get product placement, the power of the story again. Landed back into Australia, and nothing really set my heart on fire. And so I thought, you know what? I love what I saw overseas. Perhaps I can create a brand communications company in Australia that is capable of telling powerful stories on behalf of other people. So I literally started with a hand-me-down computer. I had no money in the bank. I had no media connections. But what I did have was my value set and a hell of a lot of self-belief. And 20 years later, I'm proud to say that we worked with all the top retailers around the world. We're responsible for some of the biggest launches into Australia, and probably most notably Zara, which goes down in retail history as the best retail launch ever. We had 22,000 people lining up on the day of launch. It was incredible in terms of what I learned working with that team, because they are in 100% alignment with the values that I started my business with, which is like passion, right? You want to surround yourself with passionate people and like-minded people so that you can deliver impact. Integrity, because I never wanted to work with assholes. I'd seen a lot throughout my career before I started my business, and I was like, that is not for me.
I don't know, Tori, I've worked with a lot of assholes. It's not bad.
Well, I kind of need to navigate around them and go, that's not for me. And delivery, because you're only as good as your last job, your last podcast chat, your last project, your last presentation to the leadership team. And literally, you know, when I anchored myself to my values, I found that people really understood the intent and purpose of Torstar, the agency that I created. And through word of mouth, it was just like the power pack that kept calling my office saying, how can we work with you? How can you launch our brand into this market? And for Australian brands such as Sukin and Seafolly, which were at the top of their game, when I was working with them, it's like, Tori, how do we build a global footprint? And so that's what I did. I put my passion of storytelling into creating a business, which ended up delivering some pretty powerful results for powerful brands around the world.
So it's a phrase you use then, which I always think is really important, is self-belief. It's not ego. It's really different to ego. It's kind of knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at. You have plenty of self-belief, but I think really successful people have self-belief because they get, you get knocked back quite a bit before you get to the top.
That's such a great point, Sean. And you know what? I love a knockback because I've learned along the highway of life that not every opportunity is meant for you. And when you actually run a business or lead a team that's in alignment with your values, your intent and purpose, you're naturally going to attract people on that same vibration. Now, sometimes life is going to throw you these challenges, right? And, you might have thought, oh gosh, I really wanted that piece of business, or I really wanted to hire that business leader in my team, and it doesn't work out. But if you just take a step back and go, you know what, the timing's not right. Or maybe that person has another lesson to learn before they come into my business, or we partner in some way. Or maybe I've got something more to learn before I can attract that caliber. So when you start to understand the synchronicities of life, you'll understand that challenges actually become possibilities and your mindset switches. And I find that when I interview a lot of leaders on my podcast, the same way that you do, what they all have in common is that when no one else believed they could do something, they believe themselves that they could.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that that's the secret ingredient to life, because we are all born with this superpower, and that superpower is our self-belief. It is that innate gut instinct that, when we want to start something, when we want to launch something, when we want to attract something, it's what takes us to the next level of life.
Stay with me, Tory. We'll be back in a minute. My guest this morning is Tory Archbold, founder of Powerful Steps and the host of Powerful Stories podcast. In 2019, you launched Powerful Steps, which is essentially a business coaching program. How does that work, and why the focus on women?
Well, it's a great question, because I know a lot of people listening to your podcast ask this question. I don't feel visible in a virtual world. Now, I'd taken a little step back a couple of years before I shut my agency and created Powerful Steps, because I needed a work-life balance. I was working crazy hours. I was running around the world. I was doing everything for everyone else and not myself. And I had a near-death experience where my appendix burst unexpectedly. I caught septicemia, and I really had to strip out the crap in my life. And I had to rebuild and put into place what I really, really, truly wanted moving forward. And so part of that process was stepping back from my business and trusting other people to run it. Now, while they were doing an amazing job, what they weren't doing was actually advocating for all of the great launches and extraordinary results that we had done. And I was launching Kate Spade into Australia. And I remember I was speaking to one of the leaders that had come out to this launch, and they said to me, "What's Torstar? Who is Torstar? What do you guys do?" And it just suddenly hit me that I was no longer on people's radar, and yet I had done the best of the best in terms of retail, celebrity, and influencer. And all of a sudden, someone's asking me, "Who are you and what do you do?" And so I went back to the office and I said to them, "Guys, we're irrelevant. Where are our credentials? Where is our digital footprint? These people are about to launch Victoria's Secret, which at that point in time didn't have the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. It was $1 billion brand. Everyone wanted to be a part of it and go to that catwalk show. And I knew that it was happening in New York in 8 weeks' time. And I said, I want that piece of business, because if I get that piece of business, we will be back on people's radar." And so I'm a woman on a mission. I tap into the power of my connections, but also I got onto LinkedIn. I found out who was making the decision over there. I worked out who I knew. I tapped into them. I said, "Listen, long shot, I know I'm coming in as, the person that's probably going to knock everyone out of the park, but can you please support and advocate for me?" So I sent it through at 7:00 at night. 11:00 at night, I get an email back saying, "You're one of 2 agencies shortlisted."
Oh, wow.
A week later, I had the business. So we went through this whole process, and step by step, I'm at New York, backstage at the Victoria's Secret show, and I'm, loving it. But they're all saying to us, "You've got to be invisible. You've got to be invisible. You're the ones behind the scene doing it." And I took all that on board. Then I launched Steve Madden, and that was great. Then I got a referral to launch Drew Barrymore's Flower Beauty into Australia. And I'm always one for trusting my gut instinct. And she was talking about women and empowering them not to be invisible, to share the power of their stories, to step forward. And my daughter had never, ever asked to come and have a photo with a celebrity. And I've worked with so many of them in my entire career. And she said, "Mum, I want to meet Drew Barrymore." And I'd never, ever had my photo with a celebrity either. So while I'd had all of these wild experiences around the world, with all of these incredible brands that had partnered with the best of the best, I'd never had a photo. But my daughter was like, Mom, let's have this photo with Drew. And Drew's like, Tory, come in the photo. And as soon as the photographer went click, my gut instinct was like, "You're done. this part of your career is over. You are ready to step into the other part of your life journey. And I literally was listening to her speaking and I was like, I'm going to pass the baton. I've worked with so many incredible brands. Now it's time to translate myself into a brand and show other people that if you share your story, if you own your story, if you own your power, it will open up doors. And so that's how Powerful Steps was born. It was about me sharing what was going on behind the scenes while I was creating and building a global business, but also what was going on behind closed doors, which was something I'd never spoken about. And all of a sudden, when I started talking about my personal life, people were like, oh my God, she's normal. Oh, this is what actually happened to her. And they saw me as human. And when you have human connection and when you're able to take people on a journey, it's like a product or a service. They want more. So I kept sharing my story. And then what I kept doing was saying, guys, I just want to meet people that are at a crossroad in their life. I want to understand how successful men or how successful women get at a crossroad in their 40s or their 50s and they go, what's next? How do I become a better leader? Or how do I get that promotion? Or how do I start that side hustle? How do I double my figures and go from like a $5 million business to a $10 million business? And I realized I had all of this skill set. I'd worked with $100 million brands. I worked with $1 billion brands. I worked with startups, but I proved that I could translate myself into a brand. And so then I was like, this is a business. I can help people. And that's how Powerful Steps was born.
Okay, so Powerful Steps, and you've parlayed that into Powerful Stories, your great podcast. I'm just interested in some of the attributes that you have, but that you see in the people that you talk to as well, that actually demonstrate how good they are. I mean, is there a commonality amongst them? Is it sort of unique ideas that people have? I'm just sort of wondering why these people are successful, really. Is there something that's common to all of them?
Yeah, because I think great leaders own who they are and they're not afraid of who they are. And when they own their story, they own their power, which means that when they wake up in the morning, not only are they waking up with a happy heart, they're waking up anchored to their truth. And so the common thread with everyone that I interview on the podcast is this: they've all had a game-changing moment like me. So my live or die moment, which I said before, is when I got septicemia, right? So these people have had similar experiences. May not be septicemia, it might be, cancer, it might be domestic violence, or it might be some kind of horrific thing that's happened to them. But rather than play the victim, they've decided to look within themselves to find the answers to step up into their A game. And so when I'm interviewing people, what I'm really interested in is what powerful steps did you do at that crossroad in life that took you to the next level? And that's really powerful, because if you share your human experiences, you've got to remember that you're not the only one that this has happened to. There are millions of people out there, but what they want to do is hear a story that they can tap into and go, you know what, it's going to be okay. Or yes, I can get that promotion just because that there's an energy block here or the timing's not right, whatever it is. The possibility is that it will happen. And so that's what I love. And everyone that we interview on the podcast is someone that I've met along the highway of life. So it's completely transparent and completely authentic.
Your highway of life has put you in contact with some seriously high-profile people. You still obviously network a lot, and it's almost an old school idea of networking and connections and physical meetings and that. That's obviously still really important in your world.
I'll never stop connecting. And in fact, I started my first business and also Powerful Steps by committing to 3 coffee dates a week. So for anyone listening to this podcast right now, this honestly, it costs you less than $10 for a coffee date with someone in person. And if you do it over Zoom or meetings or whatever, it costs you nothing. So for me, my non-negotiable is this: once a week, I have a coffee date with someone in my tribe. Once a week, I have a coffee date with someone that I want to partner with and someone completely outside my comfort zone. So that's how Drew Barrymore ended up being my client. And ironically, I've just interviewed Oprah's chief of staff for over a decade, Libby Moore, for this amazing podcast that's coming out on Monday. And guess what? We met on a virtual coffee date during lockdown. So, it's just tapping into connections and going, hey guys, if you want to be on the radar, if you want to attract opportunities, you've got to understand that you've got to connect with people. Now, obviously, human connection is a number one top priority, and you can be anywhere in the world. So when I used to travel all around the world, from corporates, the most insane opportunities come through social media. So you could be in Hong Kong, say at the upper house, and you'll be on Facebook, and then someone from Amazon will go, oh my God, Tory, I'm in the same hotel. Do you want to meet for a drink at the bar? Now, that person that I met at the upper house in Hong Kong is now the director of marketing for Google in New York, who then I get the opportunity to interview because we've met up all around the world, and I helped her launch Shop Up into Australia. So
Wow.
Don't give up on Facebook. Don't give up on Instagram. Definitely invest in LinkedIn. LinkedIn delivers 30% of my business. And guess what it is? It's all through storytelling. It's all through engagement. It's all through lifting other people up, sharing experiences, not just the good stuff, but the challenges as well. And what you find is people get really involved in these conversations, and then they become advocates for your business. And when you have advocacy in a business, whether you're in a leadership team or an entrepreneur, that's where you get growth. So 3 coffee dates a week. Sean?
I'm onto it.
This can be ours.
Yeah, exactly. Tory, thank you very much for joining Fear and Greed.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
That was Tory Archbold, founder of Powerful Steps and the host of the Powerful Stories podcast. Definitely well worth a listen if you're a podcast listener. Powerful Steps, look it up. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Join us every morning for the full Fear and Greed episode, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.